English translation. 428th contact. Monday, 10th of July, 2006, 15:04 hours.
Ah, there you are already, my friend. Be heartily welcome, and greeted too.
You also be greeted, dear friend, and thank you for your welcome. Even though I just left you last night, I am nevertheless once again happy to see you anew.
This is how it happens to me too, as it always is the case, when I may greet human beings again who are dear to me, even if they left only hours ago. Our life here on the earth is much too short that one should not be happy when a human being comes back, even if he or she has only gone away for a short time.
You are talking according to my sense, even if this may seem a little strange in relation to my lifespan. However, it is a fact that we Pleiaren think likewise as the Earth humans in this regard. Whatever short or long chronological age a person may have, it nevertheless happens that at the end of his or her days, it appears to have been very short for them.
But this is certainly only the case if the human being in question has had a truly fulfilled life, because he or she has shaped it accordingly and filled it valuefully and thus also evolutively usefully.
Correct. This is the prerequisite, which unfortunately is not given among the majority of the human beings of the earth, quite contrary to our humankind.
Here on the earth, the human beings unfortunately foster wrong thoughts and feelings, and also act as a result of them in a wrong manner. In their irrationality, and in their unintellect, they see and evaluate the things that are approaching them wrongly. So if they have to endure hardship, pain, or suffering, then they grieve over it and wish that their life may find an end soon, instead of seeing and using the things correctly and enjoying the life in happiness and love. But how could it possibly be otherwise? If the human beings adhere to a religious belief, and thus misconceive the reality, and do not realize that they have their life completely in their own hands and have to lead, form and master it on their own responsibility? Since they do not do that, however, they ricochet in their thoughts, feelings, and actions, and spoil their whole existence in every possible kind and wise, whereby they suffer in their lives, and they wish for it to come to an end. If the worst comes to the worst, then even irresponsibly and cowardly, the means of suicide is used to escape from all those things in life that cannot be overcome due to wrong thoughts, feelings, and actions. Fundamentally, the human beings of the earth are lazy in their thoughts with regard to a correct and healthy manner of thinking. And in this regard, as well as in many other respects, they take the path of least resistance in order to make life as burden-free as possible. As a result, this leads both to unconcernedness and irresponsibility, as well as to clinging to a religious or sectarian belief, by which all the more one's own initiative is suffocated, the striving for peace is destroyed, and the war is stirred up. However, regarding this, the human beings of the earth have completely wrong views as well, since peace is not simply the opposite of war, nor is it just a period between two wars, because true peace is much more than that. Peace is a creational law principle, from which also the law of peace for the human life results. However, peace among human beings exists only if they act correctly, and if there is understanding, concord, and justice between each individual human being and between all peoples. But this can only be the case if the human being walks along in the reality of life and in the practice of true self-responsibility and accountability towards all and everything, and is not hanging on to irrational and confused religious or sectarian forms of belief, which are far from any reality. Only in this way can he or she become free from rage, revenge, retaliation, falsehood, envy, disfavor, lies, deceit, slander, etc., in order to be free, full of love and truth in his or her senses and aspirations, without resentment against a fellow human being. But this means that the human beings must not always think only about themselves and about their own generation, and must not forget that other generations will still follow after them. Consequently, they must also think about their grandchildren and all those who are not yet born, and whose faces and forms are still concealed in the womb of the future. But the human beings of the earth have, to this day, not understood the laws and recommendations of the creation, and they have not even tried to understand them. When the sun or the moon rises in the sky, or when the wind purrs through the flowers and blossoms or rushes mightily through the leaves of the trees, then the human beings of the earth worship God, gods, angels, saints, or demons in their deluded belief. At the same time, they insult and condemn those who turn to the creational truth and make the best possible effort to live, according to the creational laws and recommendations, without understanding them, and only because they turn to the effective truth and reality and foster other thoughts and feelings that are outside any religion and every sectarianism. They curse those who approach the unknowing and teach them what they see in the great work of the creation, in the sun and in the moon, in the blinking stars of the firmament, in the comets and meteors, in the galaxies, in the trees, mountains and in the wind, in the oceans, rivers and streams, in all plants as well as in the human beings and in all creatures that creep and fly. And this is really not wrong of those who have knowledge, who have a sense of responsibility, and who follow the creational law principles. Of those human beings of the earth who know about the truth and about the truthly existence of the creation and its laws and recommendations in their deepest inner self. And the fact is that this knowledge of those who have knowledge is much stronger and more mighty than any religious and sectarian belief of those who believe in God, who are a traitor to the truth and to the creation, and who, if they were to be designated in the religious sense, in their religious and sectarian deluded belief, are nothing but pagans, something traitorous to the truth, something fearsome and terrible. Those truly with knowledge are more strongly connected with the life, the nature and the creational laws principles, as well as with the carrying and exercise of self-responsibility, and the responsibility towards all and everything than it can ever be for a human being who has fallen prey to a belief in God or other religious or sectarian beliefs. Those who have knowledge about the effective truth and about the creation and its laws and recommendations, are the ones for whom the truthly truth, the nature, the carrying of one's own responsibility, and the creational laws and recommendations are the teaching of the life and the spiritual teaching, which altogether emerge from that unendingly great power, which is called creation, but which is called God and God the Father by the unknowing, and by those who are misled by religions and sects, as well as philosophies and other ideologies.
These are very weighty words, my friend, and they correspond exactly to what actually is and cannot be said too often.
Your words have led me to these thoughts.
Valueful thoughts. Amazing how a few simple words prompt you to produce such comprehensive and valueful images of thought. But you would not be you and not the proclaimer of the new times if it were otherwise.
It is unceasing, the thoughts just start to run. But before we turn ourselves to the correcting work of Hans-Georg's book, I want to ask yet something regarding that which you have addressed with the 424th official contact conversations on the 17th of June, namely the entry of extraterrestrials into the terrestrial airspace. There was indeed the Tunguska catastrophe, in which those space travelers suffered a breakdown and exploded their large ship in the air, because it could not be repaired again. Is that also included in your clarifications? You have namely made no statements about that, although it would be interesting to know what the circumstances are regarding this.
The great spaceship, which at that time suffered a breakdown and was destroyed, out of which the so-called Tunguska event resulted, belonged to a people who live in a distant galaxy in your space-time configuration. The Christianity, however, which was brought to their home worlds by some of their space travelers and which rapidly spread out, led to grave religious wars. Once order could then finally be recreated, the space travelers were forbidden to make any further penetrations into the terrestrial space. Around 1,000 years after this decree, as a result of faulty coordinates, a large spaceship of these people got lost in the SOL system and stranded on the Earth due to a severe accident that was still occurring, from which it was no longer able to move away. So, for several months, the spaceship lay with grave technical damage hidden in the Tunguska region, whereby a larger number of space travelers mixed, unrecognized, among the Earth humans, far from the hiding place, and sexually engaged with them, which resulted in many of them becoming sick with syphilis and, with the return to their spaceship, also infecting many others with it. That had very bad consequences for the space travelers because very quickly, as a result of their constitutional difference, dangerous mutations of the disease arose which, just as quickly, expanded to a plague-like disease and epidemic which cost many their lives. They could not expect help from the home world because, according to the old determination, it was forbidden for them to approach the Earth. Apart from that, other extraterrestrials who were stationed on the Earth, namely us and our Confederates, were forbidden by the government of the home world to provide any help. Consequently, we had to abide by our directives. Therefore, only self-destruction remained for the foreigners to Earth as their determination demanded it. Consequently, they built an atom bomb, brought the spaceship to a still feasible height in the atmosphere, and then caused it to fall in order to then ignite the bomb. Through the enormous explosion, the great spaceship was completely ripped apart and torn to pieces, whereby the monstrous explosion transformed practically the whole ship and the entire crew of still 4,387 human beings into dust and ash. Everything was observed and recorded from our side. Therefore, we of course continuously relayed our information to the stranded space travelers' home world. However, we did not receive permission to intervene in the events. Therefore, we had to let things run their course. However, we relied on the fact that we could teach the government and the people of the space travelers in relation to the fact that for them, as long as they would no longer get involved in them, there was no danger anymore by the religions of the human beings of Earth. Our intentions succeeded in the course of time, which then also had the result that all three peoples, that is to say races, namely there were three of them, joined our federation. They come from a region of a large cluster of galaxies which is around 400 million light-years away from the Earth. The three peoples, respectively, races, have three different homeworlds, yet they are closely connected with each other and call themselves the People's Oneness of Bardan, as they also call their homeworlds Bardan 1, 2, and 3, and have a common government. The Bardan belong to those five peoples foreign to Earth who I named to you and who have joined our federation.
And do these human beings come again to the Earth in the current time? And the galaxy cluster mentioned by you, is that also known to our astronomers?
Yes, and indeed already since the time around 80 years ago, when they allowed themselves to be taught by us and joined our federation. But since then, they have never taken up contact with Earth humans. And with regard to the galaxy cluster, this is known to the terrestrial astronomers and is named Coma Cluster of Galaxies by them.
And they look like us or different?
They are human beings like us, if that is what you mean. They have somewhat Mongolian features and a somewhat coarse as well as light brownish-yellowish skin.
It would be interesting to one day get to know one of these human beings.
If that is your wish, then I can concern myself with that. Maybe I can arrange a visit.
It would be my pleasure. But tell me, you have stated that you have checked the last 200 years regarding flight entries of extraterrestrials. And regarding Roswell, you told me you had nothing to do with it. With regard to UFO crashes, It is claimed in ufological circles that besides in Roswell, alien aircraft also crashed elsewhere in the USA, but also in Mexico, in Russia, and in Norway, as well as in Sweden, England, and South America.
These are senselessnesses of unparalleled kind, nothing but wild stories of lies, governmental and military disinformation, as well as wild fantasies. For our part, we were able to establish with absolute clarity that all these alleged crashes of extraterrestrial flying objects did not take place.
In that case, only you and members of your confederation have actually been seen on the Earth in the last 200 years. Leaving aside Roswell and the case where you were unable to establish contact. The very case where some of our passive members were able to photograph an alien technical flying object above our center. But what about the period prior to the 200 years you have checked? Did extraterrestrials who did not belong to you then also come to the Earth?
That is with certainty the case, and therefore not to be doubted.
Then I would like to know how many different types and forms of spaceships and beam ships you Ptaa and have had in operation over the last 200 years up to today and still have, in case you are able to provide information about this? And how many types and forms do your Confederation allies have?
I do not know precisely the exact number in relation to our different types and forms of spaceships and beam ships, but I think there are currently altogether more than 600 different types that we have in use. I do not know how many further types and forms were in operation during the last 200 years. Concerning the different types and forms of spaceships and beam ships that are in operation with our Confederation members, I do not know any number to mention, but there are many thousands of them.
And have you and your Confederation members also often been cruising around in the earthly airspace with the most diverse vehicles during the last 200 years?
Yes, with thousands of different flying machines.
And could these also be observed by the human beings of the Earth?
This possibility was, of course, always given and will always be given. This even though, for safety reasons, we protect ourselves better against sight at the present time.
After all, you and your Confederation members have also drastically reduced the flight entries into the earthly space.
That is correct, since there are only a few dozen left per year, apart from the daily monitoring flights, which of course we carry out uninterruptedly.
Aha, but how about the strolling on our terrain by you and your Confederation members?
That belongs as each of our pleasures, and we do not want to miss it, even if we have to exercise caution.
Of course, but you are always welcome. The acid guys, the tri-laners too.
They will be the ones who will probably walk most frequently on your terrain in the near term.
Ah, then our car owners can be happy again, when the little ones delight the paint of the cars with their little fingers. But that does not anger us.
It is their habit to fathom things tactilely with their fingers.
That is what I have also experienced and lived. But now I think that we should turn to our work, since the time does not stand still.
Then so be it.